Hello and welcome. Yes, we have gathered here again, this time to talk about the fourth installment of the Key to Time series. Yes, this is the Androids of Tara. And let's go over first to the Swordsmaster, our very own Lee Wilson with his cat.
Yeah, the fourth instalment of the Key to Time. This one's a little quaint tale, highly stolen from the Prisoner of Zenda. It's great. It's the Doctor and Romana are split up straight away. The Doctor just wants to go fishing. Romana, you go find the next segment, and it's a little wonderful tale. It's Count Grendel, played by Peter Jeffries. What a wonderful villain. It's very sort of a costume drama, which the BBC do rather well. It's not one of these high-tech stories like we've had before, like the Parrot Planet and Stones of Blood and stuff like that. This just plods on, but it's not boring. For the 100 minutes, 90 minutes, 100 minutes it just flies by. It's really enjoyable. And Romana shines in this one again. She gets to play three parts really, as the android. I can't fault this. It's a very, very good story. It fits really well into the Key to Time season. And Tom Baker, with his humour, is on top form again. I've tried the Android trading centre, or it was, but it's just brilliant the way he's giving into the swordsman every time he points his sword at his scarf and vein in his scarf. But for me, it's enjoyable. It's a romp. I'm giving this 8 out of 10.
8. There you have it. Our first score of tonight is an 8. Now let's move over to see what Jason has to say about this. Go ahead, Jason.
I thought the story was definitely pretty great. All Doctor wanted to do is just go fishing, but nope. All these issues have to come in, and Ramona gets captured. Well, first she just goes wandering off, found a stone, which she uses a device on, and turns out to be the key of the segment. Then later on, the Count shows up, and then later on captures her, thinking she's an android, and yeah, it goes even more crazy after that. I definitely enjoy the story. You have the Doctor using a sword against the Count. Just too many things in the story that's definitely pretty great. I definitely pretty much enjoy it. Then you got the whole idea with the Prince wanting to have an android, like a clone android, to protect him, I guess, in a way, so that way he doesn't get killed. And later on, the fact that he goes into the jail prison where Ramona was over there too, trying to get him to escape, but she ended up escaping instead. With the story itself, I definitely enjoy it. The characters are definitely nice. Mary's character definitely did a fantastic job. The Doctor definitely did another great job of just playing the Doctor as being fantastic as always. The Count played really well as the character, because first you would think he was going to end up being the good guy, but then later on he ends up being the villain and always playing his little tricks and games to people. Definitely a great performance, and I definitely enjoyed how K9, just being K9. So, yeah, the story itself, definitely fantastic. I give it to a 9.5 out of 10.
Thank you, Jason. A 9.5 out of 10. Wow. Now, let's see what Jimmy has to say about the Androids of Tara.
Well, as Lee pointed out, it's based on The Prisoner of Zenda, which was written in 1894. There had been films made on The Prisoner of Zenda, one which I believe even starred Peter Sellers. And there had been television shows that did things based on The Prisoner of Zenda, including in America, Get Smart. So this is basically a Doctor Who version of The Prisoner of Zenda. It seemed to be missing scenes, unless I missed something. But the Doctor, the Prince, and his men are all poisoned together. Just poison from the wine, and they're unconscious, and the Prince is taken prisoner, and when he recovers, Romana is his nurse, but he seems to be suffering far worse than the others, and he seems to indicate that he has a wound on his left arm. There's no explanation how that got there or why he's suffering worse than the others, but he's like near death. And there's another scene where Romana sees the Count on his horse, and she doesn't seem to recognize what the horse is. And there's dialogue talking about how does it move and how does it function. I think the horse was supposed to be a robot horse, and they didn't get around to putting in that special effect. But other than that, it moves very well. We've been following the Key of Time from the beginning, and so far, not a single episode has been a letdown. The pacing in this is good. The Count lives at the end. He survives, and that's because the author was so happy with the character, he was hoping that he would somehow be able to bring him back in a future episode. That never happened. The Count is your stereotypical villain from the old melodramas, the black hat and the black cape, who twirled the mustache. He's that type of villain. And so he's a villain that you love to hate, and he's played very well. I would give it an 8 out of 10 as well.
And now let's see what Connor has to say about this.
I sort of enjoyed the Androids of Tara. This was my first time watching it, and I enjoyed the medieval sort of feel to the episodes, to the story, because it was sort of, the prince and the count and stuff. In terms of the pacing of the episodes, it was genuinely very good, but in places it felt kind of slow to me. It was definitely a far more character-driven piece than it is with the story. Apart from the king's coronation plot point, I don't think there's an awful lot of outstanding story there. It's definitely not one of the most spectacular Doctor Who stories I've ever seen. Nothing was really technical about it. It was all rather simple storytelling. It was done well. I thought the guest cast was great. As I said, I liked the Count and the Prince. I did really enjoy K9's role in this story far more than I did in Stones of Blood, because he felt like he was more on screen and he had more to do. Romana, Mary Tam playing 3 roles, it must have been really tough for her, and I think that she pulled off the story really well. With each of her characters, rather than just, Romana. So I was really impressed by her performances. I did like the peasant guy, the hunchback peasant. I think his name was Till. He was really good. I enjoyed his role. My favourite part of all, I think, was the sword fight at the end. But overall, I think it was a decent story. Nothing spectacular. Nothing really new. Just good. A good story, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
Now, let's go on over to Harry. Go ahead, Harry.
Thank you, Alan. Well, first off, I enjoyed it. I mean, we're seeing a story done by David Fisher, who was originally not supposed to write this story. The story was originally supposed to be done by Robert Holmes, but Holmes was tied up with not only the first story, the Rebos operation, but also the next story coming down the line, the Power of Krolls. So Fisher was tagged to take over. He did a superb job, in my view. Not only do we have the Prisoners then in the references, but you also have reference to another very good movie and book as well, and that is The Tale of Two Cities. And that is something most people aren't aware of, but you see it so well in this story. You've got Mary Tam not only playing 2 roles, but 3 roles. Romana, the princess, and the android. As far as the book is concerned, I give the story an 8. We have 2 books this week for a change. We have the novelization. Terrence 6 knocks it out of the ballpark again. And yes, brings in little tidbits such as about the Doctor's love of fishing and about the references to that we didn't really get in the story itself. We get the idea that Terran society is split into 2 classes. The upper class, the lords and ladies and such, who have no knowledge of technology, and the peasants who are the real ones with the technological background but don't have the political aspirations to move up in rank. So that book, I give an 8. Both the book and the story, I give an 8. Our second book is one of the Decalog books. Most people may not be aware of these books. They were written during the time when there was no Doctor Who on television. They are a series of books. They have 10 stories each book. That's the term Decalog. 7 doctors. One story each book is a Sarah Jane adventure story with Sarah Jane and K9. The one I pulled, Decalog 2, is called Lost Property. And the reason I pulled it is because Sylvester McCoy, during the New Adventure run, has a return to Tara with Bertie Summerfield. And the story itself is like a Shakespearean play. You might say it's a mixture of Hamlet and A Midsummer's Night Dream. If you have not picked up the Decalog series, please do so. They're may be thick books. They're edited by Mark Stammers, Stephen Jason Walker. Each book has a different author for each individual story. I wholeheartedly suggest you pick them up because they are superb books to read. I give the Decalog series a 9 out of 10. You know me, I love the books. They may not have turned sticks, but each individual author does a great job of writing for the individual doctor that they're put in charge of. Definitely go online, check your bookstores, see if you can find some of the Decalogs, kick back, relax, and enjoy. And for next week, prepare yourself for The Power of Crow.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, and go and pick those books up. And yes, The Power of Crow is next week. So let's move on now to Alllistair. Go ahead, Alllistair.
I gotta say, coming into this, my favorite aspect of this little series here had to be the amount of time they put into the costuming and world building. Like, all of it tied together really well. There was a mix of several different cultures that I could pick out, like British, Spanish, Turkish, even like little nods to Dutch and Norse, like royalty stuff. It was in the architecture, in the fabrics, like they said, the dichotomy between the royals and the peasants, you could see that even by their clothing. The royals had very showy fabrics, like, silks, velvets and stuff in bright, brilliant colors, but they had luster, but they didn't have any substance. You know what I mean? And the peasants themselves wore very, simple colors, but with, lots of detailing and little embroidery around the edges, which added more substance, but not a lot of flash. I think that helped a lot with setting the mood and just splitting them apart. Because, for example, the Hunchback guy, he was just in, I wasn't sure if it was burlap or tweed, but it was very much, it reminded me kind of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, to be honest. He's very much the, titular, Igor, the Hunchback. He's the guy who gets all the work done behind the scenes, and he's running around the whole episode getting all this stuff done. Whereas Grendel's he's kind of plotting behind the scenes, and that's where kind of things get interesting. I liked the meanings behind the names. There seemed to be a lot of thought put into that. Well, Grendel from the epic of Beowulf is where the name comes from, and Grendel lives up to it as this monstrous man. He's not terribly handsome, but he's nice to look at. But what he's really good at is using his words, twisting the situation. He turned the Archimandrite to his side very quickly, very easily. He even says to him at the end, just simply, "Oh, well, I called you here for the king's wedding to Lady Strella, and then his funeral rites. And then after that, I would like to marry Lady Strella." And he doesn't see anything wrong with that, even though earlier in the episode he was very suspicious of Lord Grendel, because when it was revealed that the first Lady Strella was in fact an android in disguise, his immediate thought was, because they had a conversation earlier where he was like, "Well, if the prince doesn't show up, then you're the next best option." And Lord Grendel tried to be humble about it, but I don't think he quite managed. He's very much a man who knows what he wants, and he's very good as the titular villain. He's his main problem though was he tried all these tricks that work on the people around him, don't work on the Doctor. Because the Doctor isn't like any man he's ever met before. The Doctor doesn't care about power or prestige. The Doctor doesn't want to be the king, the lord. He's already a Time Lord. If he wanted to, he could. Like, I mean, look at the Master. But he just wants to be the Doctor and maybe go catch some fish. But the one last thing I want to say on that, I thought something was very interesting. Princess Strella. Her lands are Thorvald, Mortgard, and Freya. Thorvald comes from the Norse tradition again, translating, it's a common name translating to something around Thor's ruler, or like a king over a god. And then Freya, of course, being the Norse goddess of light and beauty. And I feel like those very much tied into her characters because, well, she's the princess descendant of the kings. And their race was, at least according to the exposition, was, I can't even say decimated in that because what was it, 9/10 wiped out by a plague several hundred years back, and then most of them had to be replaced by androids. I wish they would have gone more into how that worked because people seem so suspicious and people use androids so frequently, but it's never really shown like what exactly, where androids fit in the society, especially if they were used to replace 9/10 of the population. But so it means their royal pool's kind of a little bit small. The last one is, of course, that she is ruler over is Mortgard, which in French loosely translates to guard of death. And I think that when you put all those names of the lands together, what it culminates into is, well, Grendel's plan. He was going to wed the beautiful Strella, who was descended of the kings of the royal and destined to be the queen of whoever became king, to become the ruler, and then he was going to kill her off so that he could inherit all that land. I don't know if it was intentional, but I like the symbolism of that. And the last thing I got to say is it's very interesting to me. I did a little bit of research and I found out that the outfits that Romana wore, the first one, the silk gown, it was very lovely, very airy. It reminded me of Galadriel from The Lord of the Rings. Of course, this predated that, so it was probably the other way around. It set the mood right off the bat that, you know, she was going to be both the damsel in distress and the lady in waiting. She was kidnapped, but she was in charge of of her escape. She was trying to very much take control of a situation that was out of her hands. And her second outfit, like I said, I found out apparently Mary Tam designed because she did not like the original outfit that they had planned for her to wear. And well, that makes sense. I mean, if you look at the outfit she is wearing in it, it's, well, the bodice is purple silk with green or teal. I'm not very good at defining green and blues edging. And she said, and the sleeves are purple velvet, like crushed velvet maybe. And she says how, oh, this is in fashion this year on Terra. And it makes sense. It all ties into why she was confused for an android, because not just her facial features that she looked like the twin of Princess Strella, but she's wearing purple, which is a royal color, and these fantastic fabrics, which a peasant would not have access to. And she's there, and she's holding herself wearing these colors and fabrics in like she said, what's popular this year, which would mean, and as you know, back in the day, fashions were set by the court. Oh, Marie Antoinette's wearing a 3-foot-tall wig and bodice is out to here. Well, we must all do this and look to hopefully be as good and possibly get in the favor of the royals. So it's really no wonder he thought she was a duplicate android. I did have to agree with Jimmy that it felt like there were a lot of scenes that like maybe they didn't have time for or got cut out, because it did have some jumps from back and forth very quickly. But overall, the storytelling I found was very good. And I did really enjoy like the ending line of Lord Grendel being like, I will never surrender, don't you know? We will meet again, and this time you get off easy, and jumping off in the river. It was very dramatic. I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Good. Thank you, Alllistair. Now let's move on over to see what Craig has to say about this. Go ahead, Craig.
Honestly, I mirror what Alistair's just said. She said it like 100 times better than I would. But I loved, for me, what stood out the most for this serial was the costume design, and I think it is my favourite of the Key to Time series, especially that purple dress she was wearing, and just love the costumes. It was lit really well as for Doctor Who. I love the shots on the horse when the guys coming on the horse and they've just done like a single shot through some branches. That scene stood out for me. And overall, I would give it a 10. Short and sweet.
10?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Oh, now let's move over, because I haven't forgot him, to Beefdad.
Good evening, Alan. Nice to see you conscious. I enjoyed this. It's a romp, as Lee says. I love the humour in it. The humour is a bit understated, and when you get a good line, you get a really good line. And of course, Tom Baker delivers these little throwaway comedy lines so brilliant. The setting's brilliantly done. Nobody has mentioned Madame Lamia that looks after the androids for Count Grendel. She was wonderful. She didn't say very much, but she was an incredible presence on the screen whenever she was in camera. And that woman could act her socks off with her back. If she was on screen, your eyes were on her because you wanted to know what she was going to do. And she had those wonderful bits drawn on her, the hair drawn on. Excellent. Yeah, this 4-part of The Key to Time has a very special place in my heart because there is a story attached to it, which I will tell you in the other bits and pieces because it's not really for this. But yeah, it's a superb cast all round. 8.5.
8.5. Thank you, Beefdad. Now over to me. Well, what do I think? Well, I have to say, when I wasn't really looking forward to this story that much, not as much as I was till last week in the Pirate Planet, because this one to me, when I watched it as a kid, I remember I didn't like it. And I did watch it a few years ago, but I didn't kind of get into it then. But now I've watched it this time, I actually really quite like it. I think it looks great. The scenery's brilliant. The scenery is brilliant. I think the look of it, the costumes, the sets are just brilliant. I really like that. The Hunchback character, which Alllistair talked about, is a really great character, I think. I think he's really, the actor does a really good job. It's really I think he's a standout character. He's a little star in it, I think, you know. And yeah, like I said, I do like this story, yeah. And Romana is great. But I think, I was thinking about this earlier. Mary Tam is so underrated, really, as a companion. And she's kind of like Martha of the new series, where she's kind of forgotten about, you know. That's how I feel. But she's just really great. You know, I've never really appreciated Mary Tam, you know, until now, really. You know, because I think she is really good. All these stories that she's appeared in are great. I mean, I wasn't so keen on her in the first story. I don't think she was, I don't know, it just, for me, it didn't work. But these ones, these three now that I've watched she's great in. She's just great. She's so underrated. And in this story, Tom Baker, he's great. You know, it's Tom Baker, you know. What do you expect? And the rest of the cast are great. The guest casts and everybody like that. So if I have to give it a rating, I'll give it a 9. I think I gave last week's a 9, I think, and I'm giving this week's a 9 too. So yes, And now I'm going to open the floor to whoever wants to speak.
We talked about Count Grendel, Peter Jeffrey. He was no stranger to Doctor Who, as he appeared in the long-lost story now, The Macra Terror, which, if you can still get hold of the soundtrack, you can hear his voice in that as Pilot. But also, I forget the actor's name, is it Cyril Shaps, who played the Archbishop in this or whatever it was? He's been in many Doctor Who stories in the classic era. And he was just an actor they always used to bring back. And there's one thing that nobody has mentioned, and I think it needs to be mentioned. Terrible Tara Beast. I don't know what they were thinking with that costume. Wasn't that awful? I think they could have put a lot better with that. That's just a guy in a hairy suit with a plastic mask on the front.
I was going to mention that. I forgot. Thank you for reminding me.
That for me was the only downfall in the story, the Tara Beast, and it was only on screen for a minute at that.
It doesn't fit into to everything else. I mean, it all looks great, doesn't it? It all looks great, and then you've got this man in a monster suit, just going, it just doesn't work. It just looks out of place.
It was 1978, times were then.
My father was working in the building trade at the time, and we always watched Doctor Who. He had a labourer who worked with him called Sam, a West Indian gentleman, and he had started watching Doctor Who at the beginning of the Keys to Time and had developed quite a passion for Mary Tam, and it was getting on his wife's nerves a bit. So when he got halfway through this series, and it turned out that there were going to be 3 versions of Mary Tam, she decided she'd had enough, because every time, after every episode, he would go into, isn't she wonderful? Did you see that Mary Tam? She's so beautiful. And his wife would sort of sit there and freeze. And she decided to take direct action on the week that the 3rd episode was due to be aired. She'd made his tea, sat him down in the kitchen to eat it, went into the other room and took the fuse out of the plug on the television. So when he plugged it in and switched on the television, it wouldn't work. He checked the back, he checked the connections. The one thing he didn't check was the fuse. So he never actually got to see it. And his wife got very smug. But when he finally found out, he made sure he watched the last episode, and he wouldn't let her anywhere near the television any time that Mary Tam was on.
Can I just say, I don't know whether it's just me.
It is.
It probably is just me, but the Prince reminded me of Freddie Mercury. I don't know why he had that kind of look about him.
Yeah, it's the mustache.
Yeah, it's the mustache. Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, I couldn't quite place why I thought it looked. Yeah, it is the mustache. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything else to say?
Sorry. To be fair, the outfit does look like something Freddie Mercury would have worn.
Yep.
I do have to say, Paul Canine had to wait down under the castle for the Doctor.
I like where they left him at the end, still floating around on the moat, in a boat.
In a boat, yeah. That was great.
Magic little rowboat, and there's K9 floating about in it in the moat. Perfect ending for K9 there.
I just thought it was nice to have the snappy kind of, just a little bit of back and forth he had a little bit here and there, and just at the end where he was like, oh, was he supposed to be good? Tom Baker really seems to know exactly where and how to say lines, I gotta say.
Well, as fans of the series know, that Tom Baker wasn't reacting. That is Tom Baker. That's how he is in real life. That is just him.
He just plays himself. He is the
He plays himself. He's just totally out there.
mind not standing on my chest. My hat's on fire.
Well, that's your lot for tonight, folks. And I would like to thank everybody here for joining me, as ever. And I would like to thank you for watching. And don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. Yes, do hit that subscribe button. And you can always come and join us here. Yes, sat here. Just comment below saying you want to join, and we'll sort the rest out. And you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want. And as always, keep on hooing.
I have a message for the time.